Live.
We'll roll call in a minute. Stand by. Good afternoon. We're all good to go? Okay. Welcome to the February 10th Emergency Advisory Committee meeting. I'll call us to order and roll call just to establish attendance from my colleagues here, starting this time with Councillor Nicol.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Paquette.
I am here.
Thank you. Councillor Walters.
Good afternoon.
Good day. Councillor Banga.
Good day.
Hello. Councillor Cartmel.
Good afternoon.
Thank you. Councillor Katarina.
Good afternoon.
Thank you. Councillor Zadig.
Good afternoon.
Thank you. Councillor Essinger.
Good afternoon.
Hello. And Councillor Hamilton.
Good afternoon.
Thank you. Councillor Henderson.
Afternoon.
Hello. Councillor Knack.
Good afternoon.
Hello. And Councillor McKean.
Good afternoon.
Excellent. That's everybody. All right. Need a motion to adopt the simple agenda, but we need a motion nonetheless. Councillor Essinger.
So moved.
Thank you. Please vote.
Yes, Mr. Clerk. Yes.
Yes, for Michael as well.
Yes.
Yes.
And yes, for Banga too. I can't get this technology going. Yes.
It's coming. Here it comes.
Thank you. We have all the votes.
Display the vote. Carried. The minutes, Councillor Knack, from January 27th.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll move the approval of the minutes from the January 27th, 2021 Emergency Advisory Committee meeting.
Super. Please vote on those minutes.
Yes. Yes.
We have all the votes, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, and display the vote. That's also carried unanimously. No protocol items today, so we'll dive right into item 3.1, the COVID-19 update verbal report. Mr. Corbould.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Council. Joining us remotely are members of ELT, Jen Kluth, the Chair of the COVID Task Team, Dr. Chris Sikora, the Chief Medical Officer of the Edmonton Health Zone. We also have officials and folks from the Edmonton City Police and Edmonton Fire and Rescue. Today's update reflects some of the contrary forces that we are dealing with at this stage of the pandemic. Edmonton health data that is trending in the right direction. Provincial reopening orders are cautious and limited. The COVID-19 vaccination is months away for most people, and while we wait, COVID-19 variants may become another threat to understand and manage. We are ready to move ahead, but held back by the realities of the pandemic. Today's update reflects our cautious optimism and heightened attention for what will come. It would be easy to keep focused on the concerns of the here and now, where short-term actions provide important supports and protections for the corporation and the community, but an equal amount of our attention is directed at managing the other pandemic uncertainty, the recovery phase. It is critically important that we are poised to taking the steps to rebuild a healthy, attractive, and prosperous city whenever the time is right. There will be clear advantages for organizations that make strategic shifts early and decisively, so this update addresses both our recent actions and recovery considerations. We seem to have bent the curve to pre-December levels thanks to Edmontonians' adherence to aggressive provincial restrictions that prohibited gatherings outside the household. Getting to this point has meant a lot of sacrifice and stress for our COVID-fatigued community, but the restrictions were effective against the upward trajectory of cases, hospitalizations, and ICU admissions. It seems we're on the back end of the second wave, but the data reminds us that we are still in a vulnerable place. Basic health measures continue to be our best control over community transmission and the best protection against a strained health system. The delay in vaccine supply and immunizations, along with the growing presence of two COVID-19 variants, are unfortunate realities that will likely feed more uncertainty in our lives in 2021. We may be tired of the virus and the ways it has changed our lives and lifestyles, but it is still in control. The province's plan to ease restrictions and steps tied to decreasing provincial hospitalization numbers is a welcome roadmap, but for many, the gradual changes are difficult to implement. Step one in the province's plan to ease restrictions began February 8th and allows some resumption of indoor fitness, including limited physical activity for young people and school-related sports and performance activities. The Community and Recreation Facilities Branch has completed a multi-step plan to begin the reactivation of some city indoor fitness facilities and services in keeping within provincial guidelines. Effective Thursday, February 11th, 5 city arenas will be reopened to the school groups, sport organizations, and some children's sport and performance activities with existing bookings. They are Terwillegar 4-Pad Arena, the Collingwood Twin Arena, the Castle Downs Twin Arena, the Meadows Twin Arena, Kinsman Twin Arena. Kinsman Sports Centre will be open for aquatics and dryland sports training. And effective Tuesday, February 16th, and dependent on demand, the following facilities could reopen in keeping with public health restrictions. They are the Clairview Twin Arena, the Mill Woods Twin Arena, the St. Francis Xavier Sports Centre for dryland sports training. Additional facilities may be relaunched as user demand warrants. Physical distancing, masking, and gathering limits are still in effect for all users of these facilities, and we have begun to send this message to community fitness and sports partners. The limited reopening of recreation facilities is a welcome move that our community partners are excited to get behind. We've been working closely with Hockey Edmonton President Stephen Hogle, and he did let me know that they were thrilled to see our players getting back on the ice, and we're grateful for how fast the city of Edmonton is moving to get arenas open. Hockey Edmonton looks forward to seeing more people back on the job quickly to get more rinks open and to serve our membership of almost 10,000 players as well as other arena user groups. And I just want to thank Mr. Hogle for his cooperation over this past weekend and the last couple of days in terms of coordinating this. I would now like to shift attention to our vulnerable population. The City and Homeward Trust have initiated the Extreme Weather Response, Policy 6C20, supporting vulnerable people during extreme weather conditions. We believe there is adequate shelter space to accommodate those requesting support. Tippinawa Edmonton Convention Centre has temporarily increased their capacity to 350 individuals. Mustard Seed has opened 40 spaces overnight at Trinity Lutheran Church. There has been an increase in vulnerable population incidents and disruptions in public spaces and on transit and in some of the entrances and exits and in the stairwells of facilities as people seek warmth. Disputes, assaults, and conflict between people in these spaces can result sometimes, interrupting service delivery or requiring transit peace officers or EPS involvement, or leading to threats to the safety of staff, contractors, and public. Administration has developed several responses to enhance the supports to vulnerable Edmontonians while increasing the safety and security of our public spaces. Since 2018, we have added contracted security guards at 19 bus and LRT stations. We've installed retractable operator shields in our buses, and more recently, we introduced our text message service for reporting incidents. A subcommittee of the COVID-19 task force has been formed to develop citywide approaches to enhance safety with support from EPS and social agencies. And we are in regular discussions with our community partners to explore enhanced security and enforcement, particularly at hotspot locations. The city plays a variety of roles when it comes to supporting Edmonton's vulnerable population. As funder and convener for temporary pandemic accommodation, our role is well established. Less visible is the infrastructure support to help social agencies to reach their goal of enabling individuals to live safely and with integrity. A couple of examples of this: the licensing of city facilities to nonprofit social agencies for emergency shelters. This includes Kinsman Rec Centre, Central Lions Commonwealth Stadium, and Edmonton Convention Centre. Wellness checks and patrols by peace officers at encampment locations, incident control and operational assistance at Expo and Tippinawa, and Capital City cleanup around some sites. Peace officers' referrals and warm handoffs to individuals who are seeking emergency shelter. Providing temporary road closures and physical distancing lineup and control fencing to keep vulnerable individuals safe during check days. And housing, of course, is the permanent solution. However, temporary solutions are a necessary bridge to that solution. City enforcement units continue to respond to citizen complaints regarding mask enforcement, physical distancing, and outdoor public gatherings. They work in collaboration with the Health and Safety Compliance Team, a multi-agency enforcement group of peace officers, municipal enforcement officers, and the Edmonton Police Service and Alberta Health Service teams. This team is deployed based on data analytics and works proactively to improve the safety of the community. Their focus is around malls, business compliance, public spaces such as rinks, park spaces, and outdoor recreational facilities. As provincial COVID-19 restrictions change, the team is able to pivot quickly to educate, seek compliance, or enforce the rules. Internal dashboards allow the team to visualize data and focus enforcement efforts on complaints and, again, hotspots. This graph on the slide shows that compliance has been a success story for Edmontonians, is sitting at still a rate of 98%. But the graph also highlights the challenge we have in obtaining compliance for the remaining 2%. We have significantly increased the number of patrols and the number of warnings and tickets issued with no major impact on that 2% in overall compliance. Those who resist their responsibilities to be safe and protect those around them are unlikely to be motivated to change their behavior, as a result of education warnings and tickets. That said, the city is committed to supporting its enforcement efforts and continuing those efforts for the duration of the pandemic. We know that anti-masking groups have planned a demonstration or demonstrations at the Legislative Assembly, and we're preparing to now ensure compliance is enforced at the appropriate time, and EPS officials may be able to respond to questions on that. At our last EAC meeting, Council identified 3 requests. The first was to refresh the city's overall messaging approach, addresses, and which would address, messaging fatigue that we've experienced. The second was to ensure Edmontonians are aware of current restrictions as well as the city's enforcement efforts. And finally, to develop a balanced messaging on cautions alongside hopeful reassurance. Together, they encompass 2 core takeaway messages we want the public to feel and believe, that is enforcement and encouragement. You have likely already seen some of the adjustments we've made to our enforcement messaging. We started producing a weekly public service announcement that shows Edmontonians how many tickets and warnings have been given out. Mainstream media picked up information and put the information in some of their publications. We produced 1 public service announcement last week and 1 just yesterday. And we have complementary social media published on the same day. As we progress, social media infographics will become more detailed. Our source of truth has always been the public-facing dashboard, where news media have always had access to this information. And we speak with a number of stakeholders about how we can support them in our enforcement efforts, including through business associations. We're liaising with our communications partners in Calgary on their face-covering business toolkits so that we can ensure consistency of messaging in both big cities here in Alberta. On the encouragement side, our plan is to implement several related social marketing campaigns and tactics to communicate positive message to the public about following health restrictions and the return to normal. We anticipate and plan for a decrease in public adherence to health restrictions as vaccinations proliferate. And we'll be working closely with Alberta Health and AHS to amplify and adapt their messages that address public perception about community immunity, and we'll be addressing them with separate campaigns as required. Our content strategy will reinforce that every action matters and what people do now impacts the future. It'll provide a consistent reminder of hope and thank everyone for continuing to do the right thing, again with 98% of those doing so. It's important to recognize that these are not final design concepts. We want to provide you with a preliminary look at our plan to evolve the tone of our messaging. Adjusting the look and feel and being intentional about the energy of our messaging as more of our community is vaccinated is all about shifting from prohibitions to progress. The core of this approach is managing an evolution in tone from authoritative to more conversational and joyful while still emphasizing shared social responsibility. We will focus on adding some lightness, elements of levity, and acknowledgement that things have been rough, and we appreciate all the efforts being made. Recognizing the need to be agile to pause and restart as needed with restriction changes, as well as longevity to evolve with the situation as vaccinations and activities increase. We will allow us to turn the dial as needed to comply with the loosening or tightening of restrictions depending on the health situation. The target audience is citizens with different content targeting different audiences among the citizenry, exploring opportunities, amplifying messages through partnerships with local influencers and business. And the way that we are talking to and engaging with Edmontonians will ensure we continue to reinforce the shifting public health measures in the coming months, but also that we are being responsive to the changing sentiment in the community. COVID message fatigue is absolutely real, and we need to balance the tone of our communications considering that. In the province's January 29th four-step plan to ease COVID-19 public health restrictions, they restated their expectation that mandatory work from home will continue until at least step 4, which is anticipated to start at the earliest on April 12th. The city will continue to mandate work from home for all applicable City of Edmonton employees until at least May 1st, 2021. even if provinces' mandatory work-from-home public health orders lifted and Step 4 proceeds somewhat earlier. Until that date, city employees will not return until advised to do so, and only where their return is considered necessary for operational business needs. Therefore, Phase 1 of workplace reintegration will begin no earlier than May 1st, 2021. The start date will be contingent upon the provinces activating Step 4, and we will also factor in the threat of COVID variants in our plans to bring employees back to city workplaces. This is a dynamic situation, and we'll continue to monitor workplace health and safety issues to ensure our return to work practices are appropriately timed, consistent with public health orders, and guided by our workplace reorientation strategies, as well as occupational health and safety. Supporting the mental health of city employees during the pandemic continues to be a top priority. Our goal is to ensure employees feel supported with information and access to a range of programs. They include a peer support program and a leadership peer support team, our employee family assistance program that provides short-term online telephone counseling, crisis support, and other wellness resources, the Working Mind training program, and the Mental Health Ambassador Program. Given the continued workplace and community impacts of COVID-19, the availability of a vaccine is an additional workplace control measure to protect our employees and the users of our programs, facilities, and services. The city has decided it will align with the Strongly Promote Alberta Health Vaccination Plan. The COVID-19 vaccine will not be mandatory for employees. Our strategy will include paid time off as necessary to receive the vaccine, and voluntary disclosure of receiving each dose. We will also work closely with our unions to help promote education regarding the vaccine. Information will be shared in the weeks ahead as it becomes available through Alberta's health services, so staff are able to make an informed decision on vaccination. Administration has been laser focused on responding, relaunching, and reimagining to manage the pandemic in the short term. I'd like to start shifting the discussion to our work related to recovery as we contemplate a future with the majority of our population vaccinated. We intend to be ready to go when the time is right and be in a position to kickstart growth and city building opportunities. That's the essence of our recovery plan. It's the series of approaches and steps we will take to bring back the vibrancy of the community while balancing our evolving service and fiscal realities. Our recovery plan will be fully triggered when public health restrictions are lifted and when roughly 80% of the general public has been vaccinated, and when construction activity at Edmonton resumes. New creative approaches and solutions will be required by the city and its partners and stakeholders to establish this new normal. For example, if a traditional festival season is not possible, we will work with organizers to help them adapt to alternative approaches. Perhaps it's micro-festivals that better support Edmontonians' needs in this particular year, and their needs for safety, entertainment, and a community experience. As Council heard on Monday from Dr. Michael Houghton, pandemics occur at regular intervals. Much like economic cycles, Edmonton's recovery will continue to experience fluctuations. Agile is our new normal, but we will be grounded by the strategic direction of the city plan and the efficiency focus of our reimagined work. We are already working on some recovery actions, such as Economic Recovery Grant and the forthcoming Economic Action Plan, which, while not a COVID economic recovery plan, recognizes our current starting point. Our recovery plan will begin when the criteria we've established have been activated, met, or are in place. We won't be tied to a calendar milestone, as the risk of being too early or too late can impact our ability to build momentum. It's really going to be a conditions-based approach. This requires agility and quick decision-making, two cultural values that employees will develop. We cannot operate or be successful without partnerships and relationships. This is an opportune time to advance our regional business priorities and benefit from cohesive, efficient, and more sustainable solutions. These are some of the key partners with whom we will work closely with during the recovery phase, and just some of the key partners, I want to highlight that, to develop our shared interests and create program and service solutions. Our recovery plan will begin when the criteria we've established have been activated, met, and again, will not be tied to a calendar milestone. It'll require that agility, and of course, we can't operate without these partners and working with them all along the way. So that concludes our update for today, and we would be happy to take any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Got Councillor McKean and Councillor Henderson so far. The speakers list is open. Councillor McKean.
Thank you. Mr. Corbo, really appreciate that update and how comprehensive it is. And I loved hearing the word levity mentioned in it as well. Look forward to that day, I will tell you. And now I bring forward some complaints that have been coming in to my office. And I would say that a number of constituents reaching out about, I think, what you've sort of already addressed, but that there are protests, and those protests don't end up at the legislature solely. They come into the legislature and out of the legislature, and there are a number of people in the ward, in particular in the downtown, who are really upset. And I would say for good reason, that this is a life and death issue for a lot of people, and they are deathly afraid of people flouting the mask rules. Well, I guess, let me ask, do we have any particular plans around the upcoming protest to, maybe we're not invited onto the legislature grounds, our police aren't, but what about around it? Is there anything we can do to ensure that people are following the rules as they attend that protest and leave it?
So thank you, Councillor. I think the short answer is yes, there are things we can do, and I believe there's lots of planning going on. I don't have that detailed plan to lay out in front of you today. I am confident that we've got jurisdictional clarity in terms of who does what on the legislature grounds and who does what off the legislature grounds. And I'm also confident that enforcement is happening at the appropriate time. And I would like to just defer to see if EPS would like to add anything to help answer that question.
Yeah, sure. It's Kevin Brzezinski. So consistent with what you said, City Manager, we are monitoring the situation, just like I mentioned at our last meeting. Again, on the ledge grounds, that's the authority of the sheriffs, and we know that. We're assisting with monitoring the events there. Once they are on city property, yes, we can enforce. We would take a position to monitor, and to rather than incite the crowd, we would likely follow up after the fact, if required, to issue a summons if necessary. But as I mentioned before, when you look at other jurisdictions and the enforcement that's been done in some of those jurisdictions, it doesn't impact or change the behavior of some of these folks, unfortunately.
Yeah, and Kevin, I appreciate that. And if anybody in the service could send a little bit of information to our offices around the philosophy of dealing with crowds like that, we might be able to better explain it. I think there's just people who see what they perceive to be violations and think it's really unfair and scary. And I want to be able to respond to that, and I understand the complexity of it for the police, but it would be nice to have something from EPS to explain that better. So if that's possible.
You bet, Councillor McKean. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. There's a hospitality group in town that is, I think, asking for a total closure, that they're tired of this situation and they're afraid, again, of bringing staff back and all that. I guess my question to you, Mr. Corbo, is that provincial authority, or is that something that the City of Edmonton, if we feel necessary, could be done at under our authority?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. There are some things we can do from a bylaw perspective for sure, but my recommendation would be, as we've done in the past, for to allow the provincial authorities to do that. I think the only circumstance that would sort of divert me from that recommendation is if we started to get in a position where it was clear that there would need to be different regional approaches, at which point we could perhaps explore different opportunities. But my sense is, for now, it's best that we leave it with the medical experts, who I think are providing good advice at the provincial level. And I don't know if Dr. Sikora would like to comment on that as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think the approach is described to take into account those regional differences, and I think we would have to have that evidence of a regional difference specific to case numbers and transmission events, and really impact into our geographic area here to be able to carry forward to our folks who are advising the decision makers at the provincial level. So I think I agree with that approach, but I think we are in a period of monitoring. We're on the downslope of that second wave. And I think what's been described in terms of a very gradual and measured reopening approach is good. I like the phrasing, we're moving from prohibition and really going to more of a progression. And it is a slow progression, and it will be taken. The information and the data will be taken into account as we do progress through this together.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I might come around again.
Thank you, Councillor McKeon. Councillor Henderson?
Well, just to follow up a little bit on where Councillor McKeon was going, because, my reading of the letters we were hearing from that hospitality group was a real desire to drive down to zero, to not sort of stop it good enough, but to really get to a point where they can reopen properly. And that if they're going to make the sacrifice, they just as soon tough it out to the point where we can get to where, when New Zealand has got to or other. So I think that's their request. Whether or not we could do that in isolation of the rest of the province, I don't know. But I think that's what they're suggesting, that they'd prefer to tough it out now to actually get to a place where we won't, where it won't sort of start to creep back up again in forced closure. And to tough it out longer now to just get those numbers further down. So, Dr. Sikora, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's a good perspective. It does have to be taken into the broader societal consideration of the province of Alberta or city of Edmonton proper, and then movement of our population back and forth, both within Canada and internationally, but also within our metro area.
We couldn't. City of Edmonton probably could not do that in isolation. I suspect it would have to be wider.
Councillor Henderson, it's Ms. Andrea Chuk. So we would have to adhere to the provincial orders. While we can be more restrictive, we wouldn't be able to be more lax than what they've put in their order.
No, they're suggesting being more restrictive now to get our numbers down to zero. I think that's the suggestion. But I'm guessing that would be hard to do. We're not enough of an island to be able to make that work by ourselves, I would think.
Yeah, I think you're right, Councillor, and I think the other complication is that group does represent a group of restaurants, but not all of them, of course, and so...
No, understood,
thank you.
Yeah, I just thought I'd explore it a bit further, because I think there was more to it than just wanting to... Yeah, anyway, I had another set of questions, though, Mr. Coble, because I was intrigued by your comments about the festivals. And using them as a mechanism to allow people perhaps to begin to sort of quietly and slowly celebrate as things can get a little, I don't think there's going to be a magical day where we can say, everybody go out and party. And I was struck, I actually tootled over to the Deep Freeze on Monday night, which, we'd think I expected to be the only person there. And there weren't a lot of people, but, given that it was, well below in the minus 30 range, I was surprised that there were people there. But I'm guessing, the winter festivals have been really good. They were very determined to figure out a way to be able to go ahead. Looking at what they've had to do, I'm guessing it doesn't come without cost. So it's just a heads up that if we think that the festivals can be useful to us in terms of allowing people to have some sense of activity and or toe in the water kind of celebration, that we may have to be prepared to help them resource-wise. I can't imagine that the winter festivals aren't taking a hit for what they're going to do in the next 2 or 3 weeks, the next month or so. And I haven't talked to them about it recently, but I know they were determined, and I was really glad to see that AHS has greenlit it and allowed them to go ahead. I think that was a worry. They were prepared to take the risk because they thought it was important. But I guess it's just a kind of heads up that I'm really encouraged to see that that's where our thinking is going. But if we want to go there, we may have to be prepared to help out a little bit. And I don't know if that was part of your thinking.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. I mean, it is. We have to look at this. I think these festivals help with the hope message, to be honest, and bring us back to normal. And if we can't run a full festival, I don't think that means we have to not do, not do anything at all. And so this is where the concept that, and this is just an early concept that we will discuss with festival organizers. But the idea is, can we do a micro? So at least you keep the spirit and the concept and we persist with doing those good things, and of course, all dictated by health protocols as well.
Yeah, and that is what the Winter Festivals have opted to do. We met with them 2 or 3 months ago and have tried to help them all along the way to make that happen. So we were active in that. I don't think financially, but we were certainly active in that in terms of being on their side and being adaptive. But I'm guessing they'll take a hit for it financially. So I just flagged that, and I think you're absolutely right. I think if we want to go down that road, this is something we started talking about in September with the Winter Festival. So we will have to be a little bit ahead of it. And I think it's turning out to be a success story. If Deep Freeze is any example, that's the first of the 4 of them. So I'm out of time. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Bank.
Thank you. Dr. Skora, could you be able to tell me if we know enough about COVID-19? See if somebody is vaccinated, how long that vaccination is good for?
Oh, that's a good question, Councillor Banga. Now, we do have Health Canada approval for 2 vaccines in the Canadian context, and those are the 2 that are being delivered in the Alberta and Edmonton area as supply permits, of course. The studies around the long-term protection are still ongoing. So as more time progresses and as we have more experience with the vaccine itself, we'll be able to tell exactly how long that protection will be. At least from the early studies, the protection that is imparted by the vaccine itself, or 2 doses of vaccine, is as high as 95%. So it does prevent illness from occurring, which is a good thing. But the duration of protection is still the subject of a great deal of scientific inquiry, whether that's 6 months, a year, and undoubtedly, much like other vaccines that we have, much like other immunizations that we have, that protection does wane or decrease over time. Just how fast that wanes, I don't know yet. And again, there's a lot of study that is out and currently underway to be able to help answer that.
Okay. And Mr. Corbell, the question for you now is, when we are saying that we will be probably slowly returning back to work, I guess, in your offices, let's say, without knowing all this, if somebody says that I don't want to work with, go where there are people, they're not vaccinated or they choose not to be vaccinated. So what can we do in that situation?
Yes, thank you, Councillor. I mean, this really gets down to leadership education and working with both our unions and directly with our employees. So we've got some more work to do on this front. Got a bit more time to do it. Obviously, the approach we want to take is very much on the education side, the explanation side, making people understand what the benefits are. And so I think there's a lot of leadership steps that we can take within the organization, and we need to spend some time talking to our employees about this and explaining it to them. And I might just see if Ms. Armstrong would like to add anything to that as well.
No, I think you perfectly described where we're at, and we're continuing to think very carefully about how to handle employee reentry into the workplace and the kinds of information that they need and what policies and guidelines we'll put in place. And we will be able to update you on that as this work evolves and progresses.
Okay. And my final question is about extreme weather response. I understand there are buses that go around and give it, I guess, offer people to warm up in there. Could you be able to tell me how many of those buses are and what are their hours of operation? If you
Would Mr. Smythe or Mr. Seabrook want to comment on that?
Yeah, I'll jump in on that one. Thanks, Andre. Basically, there's two routes that we have activated, Councillor. One on the north side and one on the south side, and they operate from 9:30 in the evening until 8 in the morning. And basically, they go around and drop people off or pick people up, and one central point is at the convention center. And on Monday night, the little piece of data I have here is that there were 128 people that came onto those buses. So it's a very well used service to keep those individuals out of the cold.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Knack.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, everyone, for the information. Dr. Sikora, I was just curious about the number of tests. I know that has been asked at some of the updates, and I'm just curious if and I haven't heard all of the answers in detail, but it's far fewer than we were seeing, I think, really throughout December. And I'm just curious if you have any insight or perspective as to what maybe the reason for that is. Is it just people are less willing to go get tests right now? It's cold, so people aren't going out, or any data around that?
It's hard to say, Councillor Knack. Certainly, we have seen reduced numbers overall. So one possible explanation could be that we actually do have fewer cases of COVID-19 circulating in and around our community, and that people are adhering to the good public health directions to be able to reduce transmission both in households and workplaces as well as educational settings. We have had consistent messaging around who should be going for testing, and if you have any symptoms whatsoever, there are various mechanisms to receive that testing. So one good explanation could be that we truly do have less COVID-19 circulating in the community as a result of our concerted population actions.
That's great. Well, that's really good to hear. The only other question I think I had related to, where was that? There it is. The R-value side of things, I know when the restrictions were first brought in, there was a lot of talk around wanting to make sure that R-value is at sort of 0.8 or lower. I think that was the reference point, and I'm curious how that is being used, how that particular metric is being used in combination with some of the other pieces. Because I think going through the staged reopening pieces, I see a lot of reference to hospitalization numbers, but I don't see a reference to anything else, and I was curious how that is or isn't impacting some of those steps along the way.
No, it's a good question. When we, and then again, the decisions around reopening are at the Alberta Health level, but if they have been very good about showing their information and their data, but also their decision matrix or their decision criteria up on the website, which is a good thing. And we're referencing in terms of that step one, fewer than 600 hospitalizations across the province to be really that first benchmark, and that we should be in those phases each for at least a 3-week time period. It does impart the notion that we're doing continuous monitoring, continuous evaluation for this phase or this proposed phased reopening approach, which is a good thing overall. It's understood that hospitalization is a delayed indicator. It's probably one of the most delayed indicators, and so being able to use it does at least create somewhat of a buffer around the decision making around moving from phase 1 to phase 2, or possibly back and forth should that be needed. And the R values themselves again are delayed indicators for sure. And just for context, the last that's posted was from the February 1 through February 7th time period. For Edmonton zone was 0.82, which shows that we are at least going in the right direction, which is the downward curve, or at least the downward slope of that second wave that we experienced we're still experiencing over the past couple months.
That's helpful. Thank you very much. Those are all my questions.
Thank you. Councillor Carmel.
Thank you. Just a couple on recreation centers.
it's noted in the presentation, the Terwillegar 4-pad arena will be open. Will the Terwillegar Fitness Center be open, or is that meant to be a discrete separation?
At this point, Councillor, it is only the arenas.
It's only the arenas. And then it says that February 16 reopenings, perhaps a couple more arenas and another dryland training center based on demand. What does that mean? What does demand look like that sees those centers reopen?
Councillor, I'll start off and maybe Mr. Jevnik can jump in. Basically adhering obviously to the provincial regulations, but then working with the user groups, be they school groups or sports teams, to see how much uptake there actually is. So we're not sure how much interest there is in using some of the other parts of the facilities. So we'll explore that with the groups, but we will mobilize if there is interest. Roger, do you want to jump in?
Well, just that we're in contact with the arena users, the various users that we have, as well as aquatic groups and other sport groups. Again, with the fast changing rules over the past week, the sports are trying to adapt and figure out what they can do and how much ice time or how much pool time they can have. So we don't want to open facilities that won't be well used, but we'll look to open them up if there is demand and we can fill them up.
Okay. I guess I'm just curious and feeling a bit of the concern that's being raised in this part of the city about Terwillegar having both an aquatic center and a fitness center. I suppose the same could be said for the Meadows, and that part of those facilities is not being activated, where there seems to be some pent-up demand. So,
yeah, with the assessment with only allowing one-on-one training, there's no individual use of those facilities. You have to come with a trainer. That our recommendation is we don't look to open those until phase 2, step 2.
And step 2 eliminates that need for the one-on-one trainer. Is that correct?
That's our assumption, that it will allow the individual use, but we will need to, monitor not only what's in the step, but the number of other kind of guideline changes that may be announced.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Our intention would be, as soon as we can, that we'd look to open the fitness centers and the aquatic facilities on a limited basis. But
well, I know that one-on-one that throws a wrinkle into things. We can't afford to have an attendant there for every person that might attend, every customer that might come, if I can say it that way. So I appreciate that. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Caterina.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks for the report. Mr. Smythe, given the, I guess, the tie-in with the winter festivals that have started, the first one has started obviously with Deep Freeze and then Ice on White, Silver Skate, and then the canoe for the French quarters and that. I understood that you're looking at helping them in September. That's what I heard. I guess my question is, first of all, has there been a reduction in funding grants to these groups this year for this go around right now that's happening right now?
No, their funding is still in place, and there was actually some funding as well for the winter ones to get them up and running. So no, there was no changes in their funding levels.
Okay, I've heard to the contrary, but anyway, on that, in the event, given their importance and as part of even our messaging, positivity, that sort of thing, and them actually continuing on and under these trying circumstances, is there any contemplation at this point that if there's a shortfall for any of these 4 festivals, winter festivals, that there's something retroactive that we could be considering to help them if they're put in that position or actually fall into that category once these festivals are over, given their importance? Is there some way that we can provide some assistance to them if the funding hasn't been cut? And again, that's what I've heard contrary to.
Well, point taken, Councillor. Our civic events staff are certainly working hand in glove with the event producers, basically. And if there are some financial challenges that begin to emerge, we'll get right on that, and we'd have to come back to council at some point. But we're passionate about making these as positive as But if there's a financial challenge, certainly we'll circle back with the groups and then into council.
Okay, I hope that that's the case, and given that the first one is halfway through, they'll be done this weekend. This might be an opportune time to contact them and see what the circumstances are, and if they need that assistance, and then preempt the other three that will follow in the next month or so. I think would be beneficial, given their value to everything that we're talking about. That I think we should have some plan in place or possible funding source that if they end up in those positions, that we're prepared to, I guess, at least listen to and provide some suggestions on assistance from us.
And I did have it confirmed, Councillor, that there was no reduction in their funding levels, and in fact they were given some funding from Winter Cities on top of their kind of base funding, if you will. But certainly we'll go back with those four groups to see if there are any extraordinary impacts financially, and then circle back to council.
Terrific. Thank you very much, Mr. Smythe. That's all my questions, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Maybe on the first round, then I'll pop in just with some questions from businesses we've been chatting with about 2021 challenges. Now, we made a number of accommodations with deferrals, the grant program, which is continuing, and relaxation on business licenses. And just wondering, I'm not looking for a firm decision today because it would have to come back to council, but thinking about business license relief in 2021, given that those renewals are starting to come up, and businesses, some of which are still forced to be closed, others of which are choosing to stay closed, or even if they are allowed to reopen this week, it's still at extremely reduced capacity. So whether we might be able to do something on business licenses for them in 2021, if that's part of the recovery consideration from a small business perspective.
Ms. McCabe?
Mr. Mayor, sorry, Andre.
No, please.
We are evaluating that, and we'll be returning to council with a recommendation around that. And we do understand that the challenges for many businesses have continued through 2021. So we're definitely using that as a lens in bringing a recommendation to council.
There might be some non-financial things we could do as well. There are some regulatory requirements that some of which are provincial, but to the extent that there might be civic equivalents to these. Control plans, for example, that are required for hospitality operations with liquor licenses, for example, require a lot of corporate registry searches, and also criminal record checks for people who are laid off right now. And so there are continuing costs related to those, as well as burdens related to some of those compliance issues for them. And a lot of those might be provincial rules, but in a time of looking at cutting red tape, even temporarily, I wonder if there are things we could look at that are regulatory burdens that would apply under the normal course of business, but if people are shut down, are maybe not fair or reasonable to charge for or ask people to jump through. Whether one, essentially, can we look at that, and two, where those are provincial rules that we assist with, and police do quite a bit of work on this compliance side, whether we might be able to help advocate to the province for some relaxation of some of those requirements that drive cost even when there's nothing to oversee or regulate by way of business activity.
We could definitely take a look at that and find out where we could work with the province for some relaxations in that area, but with a lens first to our own requirements.
Of course, we'll share some feedback from some of the contact we've had with some folks in the hospitality industry around some of these measures. So thanks. And I guess for Dr. Sikora, thank you for being here. We're hearing some calls for much broader and rapid reopening. And I just wondered if you could paint a picture from your expert epidemiological perspective. What would happen if there was a rapid reopening of businesses and reopening of the economy right away?
I think if things are too fast, we would revert to our pre-pandemic patterns, and that's our pre-pandemic patterns of society, how we interact with each other, with our families, within our businesses, within our schools, and other workplaces. The worry around that is that with continued COVID-19 circulating within our communities, it could result in a higher number of cases presenting, a higher number of illness, and unfortunately a higher number of hospitalization, deaths, and severe outcomes as a society. So we want to be able to prevent that from happening. The measured approach as proposed, which does take into account various stages, continuous monitoring of healthcare utilization, continuous monitoring of cases, will allow for that continued those continued patterns of behaviors that all of us have learned around reducing transmission, keeping ourselves healthy, keeping our workplaces, our families, and each other healthy, so that the staged, stepwise approach is good. And I think making sure that it's informed by information and then broadly communicated is the other aspect that is absolutely critical.
Is it fair to say, though, that it would look a lot like the United States if things opened up very quickly again?
There's probably numerous examples around the world of places that have allowed more broad-based transmission to occur within communities and provinces or states, and that exact those large amounts of illness is exactly what we're trying to prevent. I think we have a very good measured approach in terms of control measures right here, right now, and that's across Canada, across Alberta, and easing in a gradual manner in those environments where it can be done safely and with limited risk is the right thing to be done, the right thing to be doing.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Councillor Paquette?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And to pick up on that, I mean, we saw images of folks in restaurants for game night, which is, I mean, totally understandable. People want to get out there. But with the new variants in our population now, and we may not have as accurate a measurement of how widespread that is, as we continue with this reopening, I think we all understand it's inevitable that cases will rise again. So what are we looking at realistically? I mean, I know we can't say for sure, but just based on what we've seen in the past, where do you see us in 2 weeks from now, 3 weeks from now?
I'm hopeful that in the upcoming several weeks we'll have a continued drop in our case numbers across the province. And that is the hope. That certainly is the hope. I think as Edmontonians, we've worked very hard about protecting one another, about maintaining those measures in our home, our workplace, and school environments. The measures that were announced to start February 8th are measured. They're a little bit, and it allows, well, for example, your household to go out dining, maximum of 6. It allows for those fitness and physical activities that are very important to overall physical health as well as mental health, and it's measured. We still have precautions in place. We still have continuous masking. We have the hand hygiene, the screening. We have testing. So we have so many other mechanisms and interventions to help protect one another, and those aren't going away. So I think this stepwise approach should lead to continued either decreasing in numbers or staying about the same. But certainly, if things do rise again, then as a province, there would have to be a secondary response to have a look again at how do we reinstitute some of those other measures that might be important to reducing transmission and spread.
Yeah, and I mean, fair to say those hand washing, the distancing, the masks, it was all in place when we saw the second wave really rise. So I guess I'm honestly, genuinely just trying to wrap my head around this. So, go out, party of 6 max, but there's no restrictions on how many people can actually go into a restaurant. So we already saw the images that these places are packed and people have their masks off so they can eat and they can drink. They're conversing, laughing, maybe having a few drinks, maybe getting loud. I'm just trying to wrap my head around this scientifically. I hope you can help me here.
So in the context that we have and the allowances for Alberta-based restaurants, your party of 6 in an environment where you're together from your household is arguably low risk. Servers and restaurant workers.
We're into environments where there's a lot of people from a whole bunch of different environments, all packed together.
As long as there is those distancing between parties, there's reduced occupancy within a restaurant environment. There's that enhanced cleaning and as well as the careful monitoring, so that should outbreaks and cases be identified as a result of participation in a restaurant's experience, there at least is an ability to track back to identify who were those parties present as well. Because we do have to remember that the contact tracing aspect is an important part of our control mechanism that has evolved over the past 8 to 12 months.
All right. Well, I do appreciate that. Just what should happen and what does happen are often not the same thing. Thank you very much. I might have some comments when we close this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McKean is next on the second round.
Thank you very much. I must admit I share Councillor Paquette's frustration at seeing those images from a local bar as well and wondering how wise that is. But that's not the nature of my questions. First question to you, Mr. Smythe, I think. I was sent an image of it. Looks like a fire in a makeshift tent or camp outside the Hope Mission. I don't know how recent. I guess my question is, how assertive is the city being and perhaps the 24/7 crisis outreach team in bringing people in from the cold to our shelters?
Certainly, we're certainly aware of that challenge, Councillor. As I could have elaborated on my example around the buses that we've launched, there is an outreach worker and a peace officer on those buses. But certainly, our officers that are out and about looking for people that maybe should be encouraged to come into a shelter are fully much more strong than they have been because of the weather and the danger these individuals are in. Maybe Mr. Aitken, do you want to jump in on that question as well, David?
Thanks, Rob. Yeah, that's exactly right. Councillor, we are keenly aware of the extreme weather conditions, and we've given license to our transit peace officers and our community peace officers where they see people in trouble to offer that level of assistance and using those city vehicles and not necessarily buses to provide that transportation relief when appropriate. So we are aware of it, and we're doing our best to support the existing efforts.
Yeah, they may not be keen to be moved, but sometimes I think we have some responsibility to help those that may not understand the risks. But that's what I wanted to ask. I don't know who to ask this question, but whether or not there's been any research made available to government, provincial and municipal, that explains the reasons why some people are so staunchly against wearing a mask. Do we have that anywhere? Do we have an understanding of what we're dealing with? Because I think the messages aren't getting through to a minority group, I'll admit, but still it's a group of people that, as I said in my earlier questions, scares some people to death. And I just wondered if there's been any strategy around how best to communicate with those people if we better understand the psychology at play.
I would say, Councillor McKeon, that there is a ton of research out on this, and certainly when we were looking at masking policies for schools last year, we looked at a lot of it. So there is lots of research out there. And of course, a lot of it is matching with what we're seeing, that, you know, trying to get that last 2% to comply is a very, very challenging task. From a comms perspective, I just might see if Ms. Owen wants to amplify there.
We all along have been dialing up on enforcement and dialing back to empathy where necessary on our communications. One of the things that we're getting more definitive about since the last EAC is articulating that we will lead with strength. We're not reluctant to do that. And so we're not shying away from articulating the rules, the consequences, and the negative social impacts of non-compliance.
Yeah, and I worry about the counter messaging, Ms. Owen, and I wonder if there's any opportunity for a guest column from someone. I read a guest column in one of the major media outlets, I think it was this last week, arguing for complete reopening and how the pandemic was being overblown, yada, yada, yada. And those messages, I think it was irresponsible of that media outlet to run that guest column, frankly. And I don't know how we could herd those cats, but it would seem to me that they're not doing a public service. They're irresponsibly adding to confusion for people out there when they do that. Do you have any thoughts on that, Ms. Owen, on how we would deal with rogue media outlets?
We've been careful in our communications approach to ground everything in facts that have been provided to us by the health authorities. And so we have stayed away from taking any ideological positions on any of the communications. I think there's real hazard in taking on media outlets from an editorial perspective.
Ideological is, I think, absolutely the right word. Thank you. Thanks to you all. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Can I get a motion to receive for information? Understand. Thank you, Councillor Walters. Okay, so to receive for information, I understand a couple folks wanted to speak, and I think some interpretation and commentary would be very welcome. Councillor Paquette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I don't even know where to start, really. At this point, people are really looking for leadership. They're looking for something that makes sense. They're seeing other jurisdictions that have navigated this incredibly successfully long ago, and people are living their lives freely. Businesses are open, economies are thriving. We hear again and again, we're all in this together. And to be frank, that statement has always kind of rubbed me the wrong way. If we're going to stretch the metaphor, it may be more accurate to say that we're not all in the same boat, but perhaps we're all in the same waters. The thing is, some people are in yachts, some people on cruise liners, and other people are on rafts, barely held together. And sadly, some are just swimming. They're barely keeping their heads above the water. And maybe it's always been this way, but the problem in times like these is that we're in some serious chop. And those who don't have the comfort of others are being swamped and overwhelmed. Some are being lost. They don't have to be. I think of these things a lot at night. I think of those families who are pleading for their leaders to chart a safe and sensible course, a course that has already been charted by so many others, and to help in any way they can. And I think that's what we do here at the city. and I can say, and I don't want to speak for my colleagues, but I'm going to. The weight of these times and these decisions and the impact on our communities is never gone from our shoulders, nor should it be. And I just want to thank everyone in administration, in our city, my colleagues, because they're doing everything they can. We are doing everything we can to make sure we bring everyone out of this. And maybe what I'm about to say is ill-advised, but at this point, I mean, there may never be a reckoning for those who choose not to do everything they can with the tools at their disposal to bring everyone out of this as safely as possible, to preserve as many lives as possible, to preserve an economy, jobs, education, all of these things based on humanitarian need and not on political expedience. There may never be a reckoning, but by God, there should be. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McKean.
Thank you. I'm reminded today of a comment that Mayor Don Iveson often makes about being a recovering perfectionist. And 98% compliance is pretty damn good. And administration has been working collectively to do an amazing job on this. And I think council has been very cohesive in its messaging around this. So that's the good news. And maybe we'll never get that final 2%. As frustrating as that is, and as frustrating as it is to answer emails from constituents who are, as I said, scared to death about the potential of catching this disease and passing it on to vulnerable loved ones. They're really deeply concerned about it. So thus my questions about enforcement, especially around this upcoming protest. So I'm frustrated, but I come out of this today, again, really buoyed by the good work that city staff do day in and day out under incredibly challenging and complex circumstances. So I guess I wanted to say that because I knew I was asking questions that frustrate the hell out of me around people who reject the idea of wearing a mask as a service to their fellow citizens. That's really what it is. It's not, they may not believe it's personal protection, but it's just a small little gift each day you're doing for other people in the community. But I've been around long enough, sat on community standards and license appeal committee to realize there are a minority of people amongst us who are not prone to being socially aware or conscious. So that doesn't mean I think we have to give up on those people, and it doesn't mean we give them a pass. If they're on a bus or in a store or protesting in the downtown, we have to do our best to protect citizens who are doing the right thing for everybody else. And I just I don't understand those people, which is why I asked the questions on research. And Mr. Corbould, I might ask if you have any of that to send it over to my office to might comfort me knowing why some of those people believe what they do. But I was really frustrated to read that guest column this past week. And that's I may have told some of you that I used to be a journalist. And that frustrates the heck out of me, that level of irresponsibility to offer balance. But it's not. It's eschewing science for the sake of putting controversial material on their website or in their publication. So stop there. Thank everyone again for all your good work. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Essinger's next.
Thank you. And I want to start with thanking all of our staff who've been working so hard on many fronts to serve citizens of Edmonton. And, you know, I really appreciated Councillor Paquette's picture of people in different kinds of boats, and some people are swimming. We know while some have a fear they're going to catch COVID and are trying to take as many measures as they can. Others have a fear of how to feed their families. Others have fear of experiencing domestic violence, and they're trying to make the best choices they can too. And we serve everyone. It is challenging times. We know that many are more impacted than others, but we are doing our best as a community to help them. And so many organizations have stepped up. And I want to say thank you to them as they serve those who are struggling. And we know that even when we come out of this pandemic and we're able to do what we want, there'll be long-term and lingering impacts that we need to plan for and prepare for. So I'm really pleased the city is looking at recovery through a GBA plus lens, because it'll affect many of us differently, but it will affect all of us in some way. So I think as we move forward, I guess for me, I just want to tell people that we understand. We may not know all the details. We understand it's challenging, and we're all trying to get through this. We're trying to do things to keep people safe, not to punish them. We're trying to do things that'll support them and they can be their best selves. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Well said. Councillor Knack.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks to all my colleagues for their previous comments. I really appreciate it. Very, very thoughtful points raised, and just wanted to speak briefly because, and I think this ties into some of your questions, Mr. Mayor, about if we were to sort of reopen everything tomorrow and what that risk is, and we're trying to find that balance between sort of being very thoughtful and diligent, and at the same time not living in fear our entire. We don't want people living in fear that the worst is always going to happen. So I very much appreciate and understand that I think a lot of our medical experts have done the best possible to try to find that balance between being informative and being very serious about what they've shared, and yet not at the same time trying to scare people. So I think just, with that in mind, again, this isn't meant to scare people or to either anything like that. Just a reminder about where we're at. I mean, you look at, thinking about where we are for hospitalizations. If you recall back to, it was the beginning of November that we were hearing from many of our medical professionals across the province around the need to take action. And if you go back and look at the numbers there, we're not even at that point yet in terms of getting back down to that level. That doesn't mean that the stage reopening isn't the right approach. I trust our medical experts at Alberta Health and Alberta Health Services, but just a reminder that we have to stay diligent because we're not even at that point we were when the alarms were originally being raised by those who are working on the front lines, working in our hospitals, actually experiencing this each and every day. So as we're beginning to do a few more things, let's not forget the importance of staying very deliberate, very thoughtful about our actions, because we did also see the impact, right? If you go back and look at the numbers, it's been about, if you go look at sort of the increase in just the loss of life. Remember, it was 3 months ago, we had lost about 400 Albertans. 3 months later, that number is over 1,700, right? So in 3 months, we lost 1,400 Albertans because of a variety of factors, but all due to this virus. So it's important for us to stay diligent, because if we slip up and get too complacent, you can see that transition back, and many of those lives I mean, many people know people now at this point in time. I think it's safe to say many of us know people who have lost family or friends. I realized early on in the pandemic that wasn't the case. We probably knew, we were far more likely to know somebody who had been economically impacted than may have had their health impacted or an actual life lost. So that's why I know early on it was so tough for a lot of people, because we were sort of we were so successful at trying to keeping things down to a minimum that people only knew the economic pain. And now I think there's a lot of folks who've experienced either both or one or the other. And so, to Councillor Paquette's point, we've seen jurisdictions who have been able to come out far stronger, far more quickly, and hopefully we can get there very soon too. But let's not forget what's happened even just over the last 3 months. Because if we don't forget that, then I think that will allow us to get out to a more positive outcome far more quickly than if we start getting complacent, that if we start forgetting to think about others when we're sort of taking these next steps and making the decisions that we're going to make over the coming weeks. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Maybe just a few comments then, if you could start my time. I think one thing that the government of Alberta has done really well that they don't get enough credit for is allowing our retailers to stay open and not making that distinction, which the Premier's talked about, between essential big business and not, or recognizing that that was something that was very, very tough on small business and maybe not equitable. With big box retailers being deemed essential and allowed to keep selling everything while their smaller competition had been closed. And I think the example here now where retailers have the option to stay open and compete, albeit at a 15% reduced capacity, is a really good example of a learning from the first phase that's been helpful for the economy in the second phase here. And I think credit where credit is due on that. I think the test will come whether that same approach will function for hospitality. And I think restaurateurs have been put in a very challenging position. I hope that the first couple days of opening up and some of the examples that we've seen posted on social media of people essentially partying, that will end very, very quickly, because that is how the virus will get away from us again. And that kind of behavior is likely to lead to an outbreak, which is likely to lead to closure of the business again, if it's traced back to there, provided that the tracking and tracing systems are now sufficient to help us determine where the virus is moving, if the virus is moving, and particularly instances of the new variants moving. And so, I think I still have some caution around that. But again, those are also the exceptions, both on the restaurateur side in terms of enforcing the expectations that they've been allowed to operate under, and in terms of the patron side. I think those things that we see on social media, while absolutely unacceptable, are also the exception, same as with the masks. And I do think the point that Edmontonians are overwhelmingly conscientious is worth recognizing, with gratitude from all of us here as leaders of Edmontonians, that it is that diligence that has kept this pandemic from being much worse. The folks who suggest that this is a scam or a hoax because there haven't been thousands and thousands of deaths are still failing to understand that it is thanks to the collective action and responsibility of Edmontonians doing the right thing, be they entrepreneurs, be they frontline workers, be they everyday shoppers, wherever it is that they're out there in community. People doing the right thing is what has kept this awful, awful pandemic from being even worse for our city and ultimately for our economy. And as for the 2%, give or take, that are behaving in a profoundly antisocial way, you know, that has always been the challenge, I think, with laws and with order everywhere, is that there are always a small number of people who believe that they are above the law and operate with an exceptionalist mindset, and they've always been challenging to deal with. But with the fatigue that I think everybody is feeling, and the strains on mental health and the strains on economic security, I think the 98% just wants to know that the 2% is being held accountable. And so I'm pleased to see the increased enforcement around that. And I recognize that some of that enforcement needs to be done with some care and attention to not playing into precisely the kind of theater that some of the folks in that small group wish to promote for their own reasons. And so I think these enforcement challenges are very, very difficult. I think good conversation around them. I think they're on the right radar. But I think the point is well taken that the vast majority of Edmontonians are doing the right thing, and that's keeping each other safe, and that will help us with our economy, and that will help protect lives. And now is no time for complacency in any of that, especially as a reopening, however gingerly it's happening, starts again, so that we don't find ourselves in a situation of restrictions having to come back in because it gets away from us again. So let's all work together towards that, and appreciate these updates on how the city is supporting all of those goals. So anybody else? No? Okay, please vote.
Yes.
We have all the votes except for Councillor Catarinas, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Mr. Clerk.
Thank you.
Display the vote, please. And that's carried unanimously. Which doesn't mean everybody took it all in, but that's for another day. All right. That's it for today. We're adjourned until the next EAC. Do we have one we don't have one in the calendar yet. That's going to come with calendar reports coming forward, or do we have one in?
No, we have them scheduled monthly.
Oh, that's right. Okay, we've got them in now.
Until August, I believe.
So we'll see you in a month then for the next update, unless we need something